Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are accessing this video. Welcome to this presentation, which discusses the development of student-centered, authentic language learning tasks, and the move of these tasks into the post-pandemic digital realm. My name is Sebastian Brooke, and the title of my talk today is Moving into the Post-Pandemic Realm. Authentic digital tasks for integrated language skills. I only have a short time, so the following areas will be briefly discussed. This presentation will start with an overview of what exactly authentic texts are in language learning and the value they present to educators and students alike. This will also involve some discussion of learner autonomy and the importance of students being involved in the selection of the materials they study. I will then present a former analog model that I previously used in all my language learning settings, a model that involved students in the self-selection of authentic materials for integrated tasks. Now, before the arrival of the COVID pandemic, this model had already moved into the online digital environment. But this was limited by the availability of digital materials and internet access, something which changed significantly as a result of the pandemic. And most learning organizations moving online because of that. I will then discuss the digital model and how it is used in both online and face-to-face classroom settings, and the opportunities it has opened up, before finishing with a brief introduction to the challenges that this online environment presents, particularly with the rise of AI tools such as ChatGPT, amongst others. Full references and information can be found in the article version of this presentation. Authentic texts have been defined as real-life texts, not written for pedagogic purposes. Another way to look at these texts is to assume they are written for native speakers or natural situations, and therefore contain real language designed for social or communicative purposes, as opposed to non-authentic texts, which are usually designed with the language learner's levels and linguistic needs in mind, designed for language learning purposes first and foremost. In this paper and presentation, texts include not just written materials, but videos, listening passages, and other cultural artifacts that can all be pushed into service in language learning situations. Now, many academics tend to point to both the disadvantages and the advantages of using authentic texts, rather than taking a strong position one way or the other. It has been traditionally supposed that the language presented to learners should be simplified in some way for easy access and acquisition. Nowadays, there are recommendations that the language presented should be authentic. Authentic materials can provide the language learner with opportunities to gain real, up-to-date information and ideas and opinions, and know what is going on in the linguistic and cultural world being studied. Many authentic texts have something to say, be it giving information about current world or community events, or giving opinions on certain topics and issues. They also produce a sense of achievement for language learners. Being able to interact with information in a real text in a new or different language can be extremely motivating. In turn, increasing students' motivation for learning. The task and model being presented in this presentation and paper can, and indeed is, used in a variety of class level settings, being adaptable enough to most learning levels and environments. Now, one important advantage in the use of authentic texts in the task-based learning process being introduced here is their accessibility. Authentic materials have also been shown to efficiently promote learning, critical thinking, creativity, and resourcefulness in learners of all ages. Several studies have shown that students who used authentic materials, such as authentic news stories, scored higher in reading comprehension tests and developed stronger critical thinking skills, as well as developing compassion and tolerance for other cultures. Now, the pandemic was an external force that moved most learning environments online. And whereas the task model being introduced previously focused on written materials, as you can see here in the slide, such as authentic news stories, the explosion in internet access brought on by the pandemic led directly to increased use of the digital environment for learning. Now, most teachers and teaching environments now have access to authentic materials, such as news videos and YouTube channels on the internet. The exact approach or process being introduced for using such resources and task-based integrated learning will be detailed a little later. It is, however, a process that is flexible and open for adaptation to different teaching approaches, styles, learner levels, and language learning outcomes. Short videos represent valid, authentic materials in the target language that are readily available, involve current content-based language structures and vocabulary, and the potential for language learners to self-select interesting themes and topics for their language learning. Television and newspapers are gradually being replaced by online digital media forms, and students are well acquainted with searching for news and entertainment options online. There is something to appeal to every student's interest, and one aspect of the approach being described here is student self-selection of materials for the task-based assignment. This self-selection helps to ensure higher levels of motivation towards the task, as student reactions and motivation levels have been shown to be optimized when student involvement in tasks and the learning process increases through self-responsibility and self-directed learning autonomy. Integrating the language skills promotes the learning of real content, not just the dissection of language forms. And it's a more natural approach to learning a language, skills that very rarely are utilized in isolation in real-world situations. The integrated skill approach, whether found in content-based or task-based language instruction, or some hybrid form, can also be highly motivating for students. It is important to choose instructional materials, textbooks, technologies that promote the integration of listening, reading, speaking, and writing, as well as the associated skills of syntax, vocabulary, and so on. As Eli Hinkle states about the integrated skill approach, in meaningful communication, people employ incremental language skills, not in isolation, but in tandem. Jelilova in 2023 goes even further, insisting that because we employ both productive and receptive skills during real-life language tasks, it makes little sense to talk about skills in isolation. The current task being introduced in this presentation focuses on the integrated use of authentic materials, namely short online videos for promoting the use of all four skills. Now, the task being introduced here consists of 4 different stages, covering all language skills in an integrated approach, with an additional review and reflection stage. In step 1, the students self-select a short 2 to 3 minute video, or even shorter if you have limited class time for the task. They should select a video on a topic which they are interested in and which they feel would make for interesting discussion in groups. Once they have selected a video, they are required to do a close viewing of it, including making note of possibly difficult vocabulary items, followed by critical reflection before moving to step 2, a written response to the video. In step 2, students follow the model given to them for noting the key information and summarizing the video, as well as writing their own opinion regarding the issue or topic. Vocabulary items can also be included here, and most importantly, some discussion questions regarding the topic are to be included. It is important to explain the difference between yes, no, and open-ended questions that allow for in-depth discussion of the issues in the video. An example of previous student work can be given to students as a handout in class along with the model. Step 3 then involves speaking and listening skills as each student takes turns introducing the video to the group and leading discussion. One way of doing this is for each student to be allotted a set time to introduce their video content, their opinion, any difficult vocabulary, discussion questions, and then free discussion on the topic. Once all students in the group of 3 or 4 have finished, it is also possible to have a complete class roundup of topics or issues. Then step 4, the final step, involves reflection and review of the task. And this can take several different forms, from vocabulary testing of the new vocabulary through to journal or online blog writing and reflection. And this task does lend itself well to repeated uses, given the first attempt is usually the weakest. So once they understand and learn from their first effort, subsequent work shows vast improvements. Consequently, it is best suited to being set as a task 2 or 3 times per semester. This has been utilized successfully across a range of teaching environments and with all levels of language learners. It can also be assessed as part of a final grade to help with improving student motivation. The topic of assessment does, however, raise one of the challenges facing all teachers in the post-pandemic digital learning environment. The brave new digital world that we find ourselves in, as well as presenting many opportunities for language learners and teachers, also poses challenges for assessing language learners, particularly in the skill of writing, with the development of online AI generating tools such as ChatGPT. Now, the use of AI by learners and in education in general raises important questions about the role of teachers, the curriculum, and most importantly, forms of assessment. This is an area that is now being pointed to for further study, particularly in the field of language learning. As noted by Bonk and Code 2023 also, when they rightly point out that even in the fast-paced world of technology, it is rare for a new development to make waves as quickly as ChatGPT has. Now, it's important to watch these technological developments closely to understand the impacts they are having on our traditional models of learning as we move further into this brave new digital world. So finally, I'd like to thank you for your time today, and please feel encouraged to post any comments or questions in response to this video presentation. Thank you very much.